Welcome to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries. Imagine a child who is undeniably bright, solving puzzles beyond their age, assembling complex structures with ease, and showing a keen understanding of the world around them. But despite these advanced abilities, the child remains largely silent, speaking far fewer words than other children their age, if any at all. Parents find themselves caught between pride in their child's intelligence and fear that something may be wrong. Is this a sign of genius, or could it be a developmental issue? In the Einstein syndrome, bright children who talk late, Thomas Sowell dives deep into this mystery, shedding light on an often misunderstood phenomenon that challenges conventional wisdom about language development and intelligence. Sowell, an economist and social theorist, was drawn to this topic after observing his own child's delayed speech development, which led him to question the commonly held assumptions in the medical and educational communities. He was not alone. Many parents of exceptionally bright, yet late-talking children have shared similar experiences, watching their children excel in areas like math, music, or problem-solving, while struggling to form basic sentences. Sowell refers to this group as experiencing the Einstein syndrome, named after Albert Einstein, who famously didn't speak until he was nearly 4 years old. Einstein went on to revolutionize our understanding of the universe, proving that late speech does not always equate to long-term developmental delays. The book opens a fascinating dialogue on how late-talking children can often be misdiagnosed with conditions like autism or other developmental disorders when, in fact, their silence may be masking extraordinary cognitive abilities. Through meticulous research and personal anecdotes from parents and professionals, Sowell debunks myths and challenges the rigid frameworks used to assess child development. He presents compelling evidence that many late-talking children possess high levels of analytical and creative intelligence, suggesting that their delayed speech is part of a broader pattern of mental growth, rather than a cause for alarm. What makes the Einstein syndrome particularly captivating is its balanced approach. Sowell doesn't dismiss the need for medical or developmental evaluations, nor does he encourage parents to ignore speech delays. Instead, he emphasizes the importance of recognizing the unique trajectory some bright children follow, reassuring parents that delayed speech does not always signal a learning disability or developmental disorder. For parents seeking answers, the book offers hope and a sense of community, as well as a call for more nuanced approaches in understanding child development. With vivid case studies and a deep understanding of human intelligence, Sowell presents a powerful case for rethinking how we evaluate children's growth. He invites readers to consider the possibility that delayed speech might be a sign of brilliance waiting to emerge, just as it did with Einstein. The book doesn't just explore a medical phenomenon. It celebrates the individuality of the mind and encourages parents, educators, and specialists to appreciate the diverse ways in which intelligence manifests. The Einstein syndrome isn't just a guide for worried parents. It's a manifesto for embracing the complexity and uniqueness of human development, a call to trust in the potential of every child, no matter how unconventional their path may seem. Introduction: Late-talking children and misconceptions. Thomas Sowell begins the book by addressing common concerns parents have about their children's speech development. In most cases, speech delay is seen as a worrying sign, often leading to evaluations for conditions like autism or developmental disorders. The prevalent idea in mainstream child development literature is that children who talk late are more likely to have some form of cognitive or social deficit. However, Sowell points out that this assumption does not always hold true, and his book focuses on those children who defy these expectations. Children who are intellectually advanced but are slow to start speaking. The title of the book refers to the renowned physicist Albert Einstein, who himself was a late talker. According to Sowell, Einstein's delayed speech, combined with his later intellectual achievements, is representative of a broader pattern observed in certain late-talking children. These children tend to exhibit advanced problem-solving skills, exceptional concentration, and unusual talents, particularly in mathematics, music, or analytical thinking, but their speech development lags behind. The central premise of the book is that not all late-talking children are developmentally delayed or cognitively impaired. In fact, some are exceptionally gifted, and their delayed speech may be a marker of this intellectual complexity rather than a sign of deficiency. Chapter 1. The Einstein Phenomenon. Sowell opens by introducing the phenomenon of late-talking children who later excel in intellectual pursuits. He describes Albert Einstein as the quintessential example of this group, a child who struggled with speech during his early years, but went on to become one of the greatest minds in history. The author emphasizes that many late talkers are misdiagnosed or misunderstood in their early years because they do not fit the typical developmental trajectory. Doctors, educators, and even well-meaning family members often pressure parents to seek intervention or assume that something is wrong with the child. However, Sowell argues that in the case of children with high intellectual capacity, delayed speech may be a temporary phase rather than an indicator of a deeper problem. Through this lens, Sowell urges parents and professionals to take a more nuanced view of late-talking children. He stresses the importance of recognizing that intellectual development does not always follow a linear path, and that milestones like speech should not be the sole determinant of a child's cognitive abilities. Chapter 2. Understanding Late-Talking Children. In this chapter, Sowell delves into the characteristics of late-talking children. He identifies key patterns in their behavior that distinguish them from other children who experience speech delays due to developmental disorders or language impairments. These late-talking children often show exceptional memory, advanced problem-solving skills, and intense focus on particular subjects. Sowell also points out that many of these children have parents or close relatives who are highly intelligent, particularly in fields like mathematics, engineering, or music. The connection between high-level intellectual capacity and delayed speech is a recurring theme throughout the book, and Sowell draws upon research that suggests a possible genetic or neurological basis for this phenomenon. Additionally, late talkers often have strong nonverbal communication skills. They may use gestures, facial expressions, and other forms of body language to convey their thoughts and needs. Sowell argues that these children are not struggling with understanding language. Rather, they are processing it in a different way that takes longer to manifest in spoken words. Chapter 3. The Role of Family Background. A significant portion of the book focuses on the family backgrounds of late-talking children. Sowell describes how many parents of late talkers share certain traits, particularly in terms of intellectual and professional accomplishments. It is common for parents of late-talking children to be engineers, scientists, mathematicians, musicians, or in other fields that require intense analytical or creative thinking. Sowell suggests that the intellectual environment in these families plays a role in the development of late talkers. Parents of late-talking children often emphasize problem-solving, independent thinking, and abstract concepts over rote learning or early verbal communication. As a result, these children may prioritize cognitive tasks that interest them, such as puzzles, numbers, or patterns, over speech. Sowell also notes that siblings of late talkers often exhibit similar traits, either in terms of intellectual ability or speech delays. This suggests that the phenomenon of late talking may be linked to familial or genetic factors rather than being purely environmental. Chapter 4. Misdiagnoses and overreactions. One of the key arguments in the book is that late-talking children are often misdiagnosed with conditions like autism or developmental disorders when, in fact, they do not fit the criteria for these diagnoses. Sowell describes several case studies where parents were told that their children had serious developmental delays, only for the children to later prove exceptionally gifted once they began talking. The author is critical of the tendency to pathologize late talkers, especially when there are no other signs of cognitive or social impairment. He cautions parents and professionals against jumping to conclusions based solely on speech delays, urging them to consider the child's broader intellectual and social development before making a diagnosis. Sowell argues that many of these misdiagnoses stem from a lack of understanding about the diversity of normal childhood development. While most children follow a predictable timeline for milestones like speech, there is a subset of children, like those in the Einstein syndrome, who do not fit the typical pattern. These children, according to Sowell, should not be judged solely by their speech development, but by their overall intellectual abilities. Chapter 5. The Genius Behind the Delay. Sowell explores the idea that delayed speech in these children might actually be a sign of advanced cognitive processing. He posits that their brains may be focused on more complex tasks during early childhood, which can delay the development of language skills. For example, a child who is deeply absorbed in mathematical or spatial reasoning may not prioritize verbal communication in the same way as their peers. The author introduces the concept of focused intelligence to describe these children. Late-talking children often display intense concentration on specific subjects or activities, such as music, numbers, or mechanical systems. This focus can sometimes come at the expense of other developmental areas like speech, but it is often a precursor to exceptional abilities in later life. Sowell also discusses the possibility that the brains of these children are wired differently. Some researchers believe that late talkers may have unusually strong connections between certain regions of the brain, which could account for their advanced abilities in nonverbal areas like math or music. Chapter 6. Early Intervention. Helpful or harmful? In this chapter, Sowell examines the role of early intervention programs for late-talking children. While many parents are encouraged to seek speech therapy or other forms of intervention as soon as their child shows signs of delayed speech, Sowell argues that this approach is not always necessary for children in the Einstein syndrome group, that he acknowledges that early intervention can be beneficial for children with genuine developmental delays or speech disorders. But he questions whether it is always appropriate for bright late talkers. In some cases, early intervention may place unnecessary pressure on these children and their families, leading to frustration or anxiety. Sowell advocates for a more patient approach, where parents are encouraged to observe their child's development over time rather than rushing into interventions. He suggests that many late talkers will begin speaking when they are ready, and that their intellectual abilities will eventually shine through without the need for intensive therapy. Chapter 7. The role of music and mathematics. One of the most intriguing aspects of late-talking children is their affinity for music and mathematics. Sowell devotes an entire chapter to exploring this connection, noting that many late talkers demonstrate a natural talent for these subjects from an early age. The author discusses how music and math both involve abstract reasoning, pattern recognition, and problem-solving skills, which are areas where late-talking children often excel. He also highlights the role of nonverbal communication in these disciplines, suggesting that late talkers may gravitate toward music and math because they can express themselves through these mediums without relying on speech. Sowell provides examples of famous late talkers who went on to achieve greatness in music and math, including Einstein himself, who was known for his love of music and his groundbreaking work in theoretical physics. Chapter 8. Case Studies of Late-Talking Children. In one of the book's most compelling chapters, Sowell presents several case studies of late-talking children, including detailed interviews with their parents. These case studies provide real-world examples of the Einstein syndrome, showing how these children develop over time and eventually surpass their peers in intellectual abilities. The case studies reveal a wide range of experiences, from children who began speaking late but quickly caught up with their peers, to those who remained nonverbal for several years before suddenly beginning to talk in full sentences. In each case, the children displayed remarkable talents in areas like math, music, or problem-solving, even while their speech lagged behind. Sowell uses these case studies to illustrate his broader point that late-talking children should not be judged solely by their speech development. Instead, parents and professionals should look at the child's overall intellectual abilities and take a more patient, holistic approach to their development. Chapter 9. Lessons for Parents and Educators. In the final chapters of the book, Sowell offers practical advice for parents and educators of late-talking children. He emphasizes the importance of patience and understanding, urging parents not to panic if their child is slow to speak. Sowell also encourages parents to nurture their child's intellectual interests, even if they seem unconventional. For example, A late-talking child who is fascinated by numbers or patterns should be given opportunities to explore those subjects, rather than being forced to focus solely on speech development. For educators, Sowell suggests that late-talking children should not be labeled as developmentally delayed or autistic without a thorough evaluation. He advocates for a more individualized approach to education, where each child's unique strengths and weaknesses are taken into account. Chapter 10. Comparing Einstein syndrome with other speech delays that I in this chapter. Sowell further distinguishes between late-talking children within the Einstein syndrome and other cases of delayed speech due to various causes like autism, intellectual disability, or developmental speech disorders. He provides a comparative analysis, emphasizing that the key difference in children with Einstein syndrome is their overall intellectual capacity and specific talents, often masked by the speech delay. Sowell addresses common speech disorders such as apraxia of speech, where children struggle to coordinate the muscles needed for talking, and other developmental delays associated with broader cognitive issues. However, he makes clear that while late-talking children with the Einstein syndrome show delayed verbal communication, their nonverbal intelligence and creativity often stand out at an early age. These children typically do not display the social challenges seen in conditions like autism, where both speech and social interaction can be impaired. That he also discusses how the behavior of Einstein syndrome children in social situations, while possibly more introverted, doesn't imply a lack of social awareness. They may be less vocal, but are usually highly aware of their surroundings, demonstrating acute understanding and learning abilities in nonverbal ways that be why separating Einstein syndrome from other speech-related developmental conditions. Sowell continues to stress the importance of not rushing to label late talkers with a disorder. He emphasizes the broader context in which late-talking children should be assessed and understood. Chapter 11. The role of neurological development. That I end this chapter. Sowell delves into the neurological factors that might contribute to late talking among bright children. He reviews research on brain development and the differences in the brain structures of highly gifted individuals, proposing that late talkers may be using their brain in more complex ways that prioritize nonverbal intelligence over speech. That he suggests that for children with the Einstein syndrome, brain regions involved in abstract reasoning, mathematical problem solving, or musical aptitude may develop more rapidly than the areas associated with language production. This could explain why these children excel in areas like music or puzzles, yet struggle with speech during early childhood. Sowell includes interviews with neurologists and cognitive scientists who support the idea that some children's cognitive processing might be more focused on nonverbal intelligence. For example, areas of the brain associated with spatial reasoning or auditory pattern recognition might be overdeveloped compared to language centers. This neurological perspective offers parents an additional explanation as to why their child may be talking late despite showing clear signs of intelligence in other domains. Furthermore, he explores how brain plasticity, its ability to change and adapt, might mean that the late development of language centers can eventually catch up with other cognitive functions, resulting in a late but complete mastery of speech. Chapter 12. Reassessing milestones and expectations. Sowell critiques the widespread reliance on developmental milestones to assess children's progress, particularly when it comes to speech. He argues that while milestones can be helpful in identifying potential developmental issues, they are not universally applicable, especially for late talkers who are otherwise intellectually advanced. That he encourages parents to think of their child's development as a unique trajectory, rather than a strict timeline. Sowell discusses the societal pressures that often push parents to compare their children with others, causing unnecessary anxiety when a child falls behind in one area, such as speech. However, as he emphasizes throughout the book, late-talking children with high intellectual potential often surpass their peers in other areas of cognitive development, such as analytical thinking or music. To illustrate this point, Sowell highlights several historical examples of individuals who were late talkers but went on to make significant contributions to science, technology, and the arts. Besides Einstein, he mentions Richard Feynman, another renowned physicist, who also had speech delays but demonstrated profound intellectual abilities early on. Through this exploration, Sowell emphasizes the importance of nurturing each child's unique talents rather than focusing too heavily on conventional developmental norms. Chapter 13. Parenting Late-Talking Children. This chapter focuses on practical advice for parents of late-talking children. Sowell offers a guide for how parents can support their child's development without overwhelming them or prematurely forcing interventions. He stresses the importance of patience and trust in the child's innate abilities. Sowell encourages parents to create a stimulating intellectual environment for their child, filled with opportunities to explore interests like music, puzzles, numbers, and other nonverbal activities. He highlights the importance of following the child's lead, allowing them to pursue areas where they show natural aptitude and curiosity, even if their speech lags behind. That he also advises parents to be wary of overly aggressive interventions, such as speech therapy, when there are no other signs of cognitive or social delay. While therapy can be helpful for some children, it may not always be necessary for late talkers who are otherwise developing well in other areas. He suggests that parents work closely with educators and healthcare professionals who are willing to take a more nuanced approach to the child's development, recognizing that speech will come in time. Sowell also stresses the importance of emotional support, urging parents to avoid showing frustration or anxiety over their child's speech delay. He believes that creating a relaxed, loving environment is key to helping late talkers develop their full potential. Chapter 14. The Role of Education and Schools. Sowell addresses the role of formal education in the lives of late-talking children. He argues that traditional schooling, with its emphasis on verbal communication, can sometimes fail to accommodate children with the Einstein syndrome. These children may excel in subjects like math and music, but struggle in language arts or other areas that require early verbal proficiency. Sowell critiques the one-size-fits-all approach often taken by schools, where speech delays can lead to assumptions about a child's overall intellectual capacity. He calls for a more individualized approach to education, where late-talking children are encouraged to excel in their areas of strength while receiving support in areas where they need it. That he also discusses the potential risks of labeling late talkers with learning disabilities or placing them in special education programs prematurely. Sowell cautions that such labels can lead to lowered expectations and missed opportunities for intellectual growth. Instead, Sowell advocates for a strengths-based approach to education, where late-talking children are recognized for their unique talents and given the opportunity to develop those talents alongside their peers. He emphasizes the importance of fostering a love of learning and encouraging children to pursue their passions, whether in math, music, or other areas where they excel. Chapter 15. Success Stories of Late Talkers. Sowell ends the book by sharing a series of success stories from late talkers who went on to achieve great things in their respective fields. These stories serve as both an inspiration and a reassurance to parents who may be worried about their child's speech development. The success stories span a range of fields, from science and engineering to music and the arts. Sowell includes interviews with the late talkers themselves, as well as their parents, to provide a first-hand perspective on their experiences. One recurring theme in these success stories is the role of perseverance and patience. Many of the late talkers in these stories describe how they were able to develop their intellectual talents despite early speech delays, often with the support of understanding parents and teachers who recognize their potential. Sowell also highlights the fact that many of these late talkers were able to use their unique cognitive abilities to their advantage. For example, some of them went on to become pioneers in fields like computer science, mathematics, or engineering, where their nonverbal intelligence played a key role in their success. The chapter serves as a fitting conclusion to the book, reinforcing Sowell's central message that late talkers should not be underestimated. With the right support and understanding, they can achieve great things and make significant contributions to society. Conclusion. A reassuring perspective for parents. In the final pages of the Einstein Syndrome, Sowell offers a message of reassurance to parents of late-talking children. He reiterates that speech delays do not necessarily indicate a problem, and in many cases, they are simply a sign that the child's brain is developing in unique and remarkable ways. Sowell urges parents to resist the pressure to conform to conventional developmental timelines and instead focus on nurturing their child's individual strengths and talents. He reminds readers that intelligence and creativity come in many forms, and that speech is just one aspect of a child's overall development. Ultimately, the Einstein syndrome is a call to patience, understanding, and a broader view of what it means to be a late-talking child. By challenging conventional wisdom about speech delays, Sowell opens the door to a more nuanced and compassionate approach to childhood development, one that recognizes the potential for greatness in every child. Final thoughts. The Einstein Syndrome is a thought-provoking and deeply insightful book that challenges the assumptions often made about late-talking children. Through careful research, personal anecdotes, and compelling case studies, Thomas Sowell presents a powerful argument that some late talkers are not developmentally delayed, but intellectually gifted. Sowell's book is both a resource and a source of comfort for parents who may be concerned about their child's speech development. It provides a new framework for understanding late-talking children, one that is based on their strengths rather than their deficits, highlighting the connection between late talking and exceptional intellectual abilities. Sowell offers hope and reassurance to parents and professionals alike, encouraging them to take a more patient and holistic view of childhood development. For anyone interested in child development, intelligence, or the complexities of human cognition, the Einstein Syndrome is an essential read. It opens up new possibilities for how we understand and support the unique development of bright children who talk late, and it challenges us to rethink our assumptions about what it means to be on track in early childhood development. Read the book to learn more. If you are liking the series, please subscribe and press the like button. Thank you.